These were the last seconds of the flight of the Polish F-16 piloted by Major Maciej Krakowian. Currently, efforts are underway at the airport to determine the causes of the crash. The wreckage of the plane was scattered over an area of over 20 hectares. Operational activities are underway at the airport in Radom. Two teams are working, the prosecutor's office is working, and the Air Accident Investigation Commission is working. These activities are being conducted independently until the full explanation and presentation of the case, the report, and the conclusions. The prosecutor's office has already launched an investigation into the cause of the air traffic accident, which resulted in the death of the pilot. The first witnesses have already been interviewed. 14 prosecutors are working on site, supported by the military police. The black box has been found and retrieved. It has been secured by representatives of the State Aviation Accident Investigation Commission. In the near future, we intend to conduct specialized tests with the participation of a prosecutor from Warsaw. We do not know where these tests will take place, probably outside the Republic of Poland. The body of Major Maciej Krakowian was also recovered and transported to the forensic medicine facility in Warsaw, where detailed examinations are planned. In yesterday's crash, Poland lost one of its best F-16 pilots. He was a person who exuded professionalism. He passed on his experience to younger colleagues who came to this base, to the F-16 Air Force. The pilot's elite skills raise questions as to whether the cause of the crash could have been a technical failure of the aircraft. We need to be patient here, but we really have to consider all possibilities, even those involving some element of sabotage, equipment damage, or some technical error. Some experts believe that the aircraft lost thrust while performing a barrel roll, which made it virtually uncontrollable. Others point out that high air temperatures may have contributed to the crash. It is also possible that the pilot temporarily lost consciousness due to G-forces. Recovering from such blackouts sometimes take 1 second, half a second, or 2 seconds. But a person at the right altitude can cope with negative G-forces and is then able to pull the machine out of the stall. Perhaps, unfortunately, the altitude made it impossible to pull out of the stall and the pilot, unconscious, died. It is still too early to determine what caused the tragedy. Experts are exercising extreme caution in their statements on this matter. Either a technical malfunction or pilot error. Two possibilities. There is a third factor that we are investigating, a third thread. It is a logistical, technical, and service issue, which will also be taken into account here. That is why, from the very beginning, we wanted to gather all the documentation as quickly as possible. Yesterday's tragedy in Radom was not the first incident of its kind. It is already the third aviation accident during an air show in this very city. In the two previous accidents, 18 and 16 years ago, 4 pilots were killed. In July last year, during rehearsals for the air show at the airport in Gdynia, an M346 Bielik crashed, also piloted by an experienced pilot. All this raises questions about the point of organizing such events, which from time to time result in tragic losses of aircraft and, above all, the best pilots. F-16 fighter jets play a key role in the Polish army. They defend Polish airspace and function as a deterrent. The safety of pilots and aircraft should be a priority. However, for months now, Poland's government has been cutting costs on the military. The strength of a country's defense often consists of a system of interconnected vessels, sometimes very small cogs in this military machine. There should definitely be no austerity in the military or uniformed services, because this is a path to disaster. Back in March, the newspaper Gazeta Polska Codziennie wrote about how the government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, was cutting corners on F-16 maintenance. The military warned that there was no money left to paint the fighter jets with a specialized type of paint that reduces the visibility of the aircraft to enemy radars.
Siły powietrzne należą do tych.
The Air Force is a type of armed force that is expensive, but these costs are an investment in our security. Therefore, actions that could result in a threat are unacceptable. It is the government's obligation to provide funds for this purpose, all the more so because these are negligible funds in relation to the overall cost of maintaining the Army, Air Force, or even the F-16s. The F-16s are scheduled to undergo a thorough modernization, for which huge sums of money are allocated in relation to the cost of purchasing this paint. Savings and corner cutting like this inhibit these machines' functionality, and these fighter jets are a key aspect of Polish national security.
Z pewnością taka sytuacja nie...
Such a situation should never occur. No form of defense should be subject to savings. Anyway, the current law on homeland defense makes it impossible to reduce defense spending. It has to reach a certain threshold. I remember when that story first broke, it was a lesson for everyone not to let this kind of thing happen, even if we think it's about really basic stuff. These machines require proper servicing and detailed technical inspections. So why is Donald Tusk's government cutting corners on such a crucial issue? This is scandalous, but it is reminiscent of all those other cases, such as the ammunition and anti-tank missiles that were wandering around Polish territory. But that's not all. Very disturbing news is coming from the military bases in Łask and Świdwin. The hangars for F-35 Hussarz aircraft being built at the military airports are being constructed from lower quality materials than required by the manufacturer of these state-of-the-art fighter jets. The Ministry of Defense is looking for savings, thereby neglecting the process of modernizing the Polish army. We saw this in the case of the F-35 hangars, which are being built with inferior materials that are flammable, and this process may even lead to us losing the warranty on these machines. The worst thing is that this is all happening not just with the knowledge, but also with the consent of the current authorities of the Ministry of Defense and the head of government himself.
Stan budżetu Ministerstwa Obrony Narodowej wygląda źle.
The state of the Ministry of Defense's budget looks bad primarily due to the activities of Donald Tusk's government. The Minister of Defense received an order from the Minister of Finance that the obligations relating to the Armed Forces Support Fund be paid exclusively from the Ministry of Defense's budget. This is at the expense of modern equipment and the development of the Polish army. At what point does Polish citizens' trust in their own government and military institutions factor in? Donald Tusk governs on a case-by-case basis. He only became interested in the borders when the border defense movement appeared. Then it turned out that there were no suitable materials for painting F-16 aircraft. Then it turned out that the hangars for the F-35 were being built from flammable materials. That's the kind of prime minister we have. The safety of Polish citizens should always be paramount, but under the current government, the priority is cost-cutting. "23 killed, including 4 children. Over 200 buildings were damaged, including diplomatic facilities, schools, and kindergartens. No one here has any doubts about what Moscow wants. This is what Putin's goons are doing. I understand there is a war going on and military targets can be bombed, but why would they lie to the whole world, claiming that they are only attacking military targets, when they in fact are deliberately attacking civilians? This is not the first house, nor the second, nor the third. Kyiv has no illusions left. There are talks about peace, yes, but only on the Kremlin's terms. There is no question of compromise or real negotiations. In Washington, we heard that Putin is apparently ready to end the war, to meet at the leadership level and resolve key issues. But he chooses ballistics instead of any real steps towards peace. He kills children so as not to talk about when and how to bring about peace. According to Western politicians, there will be no peace talks. The Kremlin has calculated the risk of confrontation with the US. A dictator's image is his biggest asset, so a meeting with Zelensky would be difficult for Putin to explain in his own political courtyard.
We
must revisit this topic today, and this in light of the fact that, of course, there will be no meeting between President Zelensky and President Putin, other than what was agreed between President Trump and President Putin last week when we were together in Washington. Europe wants to hammer at Russian interests. Another package of sanctions is in the works.
These attacks show that Putin is just mocking any kind of peace efforts that are made. So what we have to do is increase pressure on Russia, and this is really what they understand, the pressure.
Ukraine continues to seek support from the United States. Just today, envoys from Kyiv met with one of President Trump's advisors in New York. They discussed Putin's demands and, crucially, the options available to the White House today.
No, I'd like it to stop. I want to get it to stop. And it will not be a world war, but it'll be an economic war. And an economic war is going to be bad. And it's going to be bad for Russia.
All the more so as the Kremlin is clearly turning to the Far East and is increasingly active in building relations with both Beijing and Pyongyang. For Americans, this is an additional challenge. For Europe, it is a diplomatic and economic nightmare. The dependence of European markets on Chinese supplies in the face of growing Sino-Russian cooperation may come back to haunt the West much more painfully than the recent drastic breaking of the energy muzzle imposed on Europe by Russia. 2 days ago, at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a lone gunman carried out a mass shooting.
Yesterday, a coward decided to take our 8-year-old son Fletcher away from us. Because of their actions, we will never be allowed to hold him, talk to him, play with him, and watch him grow into the wonderful young man.
The entire Minnesota community is in mourning and struggling to comprehend what could have led to this act of violence. The lone gunman did not enter the church. He stood outside and shot through the very narrow windows of the church. Robin Westman, a 23-year-old trans-identified man, took his own life behind the church after the attack. Westman was born male. The request to change his name was approved by a Minnesota district court in 2020. The name Robert was changed to Robin. According to the prosecutor's office, the man expressed hatred for black people, Mexicans, Christians, and Jews on social media. He also hated President Donald Trump.
The shooter left behind hundreds of pages of writings that describe the shooter's plan, writings that describe the shooter's mental state, and more than anything, writings that describe the shooter's hate.
Investigators are analyzing hundreds of pages of documents, video recordings, and other evidence in search of a motive. The police have also conducted dozens of interviews with witnesses, as well as people who knew the suspect and members of his family.
We did a check of all of our holdings, the FBI holdings, and he was not in our holdings prior to this incident, so we didn't have anything on him at that time.
At Annunciation Church, there was a custom of locking the church doors after Mass began. The tragedy unfolded shortly after Mass began, so that saved many people.
These children were slaughtered by a shooter who could not see them. He was standing outside of the building, firing through very narrow church windows on the level where they would line up with the pews. And even ultimately, when he got to the rear of the church.
The shooter was a member of the local community and knew his parish and church very well.
Particularly heinous and cowardly about this is these children were slaughtered by a shooter who could not see them. He was standing outside of the building, firing through very narrow church windows.
Pedro Maldonado will never forget that day. His 2 children survived the shooting, but he still doesn't know how to explain to them what happened and how to talk to them about it.
You should be worrying about dropping their kids to school and be worrying that somebody's going to come to shoot to the school or to a church. Why? It's just something that we need to figure out. I don't know how many more kids need to die, but I promise you that no parent wants to live what we're living here in our community.
Officers secured a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol at the scene, all of which were used in the attack. All of the guns were legally purchased, prompting Democratic politicians to reignite the push for gun control. Republicans, on the other hand, claim the crux of the issue is the recognition of transgender identities. In essence, what drove the shooter over the brink was having his delusions repeatedly affirmed both by the law and online activist circles.